Hey friends, welcome back to another Coffee and Conspiracy episode. Today we are going to be talking about our front lawns, or more specifically, grass. I know. Is there really a conspiracy behind grass? Well, let's see if it's just maybe a social shift or a cultural change that happened here in America, or is there really something a little more sinister behind our beautiful front lawns? So before we had our front lawns, there was a lot of different options that could be going on in your front yard. A smaller green space would have been very practical. So it was the perfect spot for early Americans to grow vegetables, gardens, native plants, and herbs so they could feed their family. The original lawn, like we know now, was harder to create in the US because here our native grass, if you will, was not ideal. It wasn't smooth. It wouldn't create a uniformed lawn. It was difficult to maintain. In fact, the grasses in America proved very unsuitable for a tidy, well and controlled lawn. Most grasses we see in our home today weren't here years ago. So yes, friends, the grass that we have picnics on, or we ran through the sprinkler in, or just enjoy looking at, most of the turf grass species in the US lawns originated in Europe or other parts of the world. Examples include Kentucky bluegrass, which is native to Europe and parts of Asia. So where did this idea of a luscious lawn come from? Well, rumor had it that the wealthy class in England had created a new idea of a luscious green space in front of their homes. So they no longer had to grow their own food out there. They didn't have their animals grazing out there. They were wealthy and they had a luscious green space that they could use for leisure activities. This included golf, it included lawn bowling, leisure time, tennis. The wealthy no longer had to grow their own food in the front or have their cows out there. It was a leisure lawn time. Now, Thomas Jefferson has been credited with establishing one of the first largest English-inspired lawns at Monticello, kind of remaking what he saw going on in England and then maybe starting the trend here in the US. But a lot of historians say that this trend actually happened before Thomas Jefferson showcased his Monticello lawn, and that many English settlers opted to bring their lawns with them as they traveled to America. So the grass here in America originally was not good for cows to graze on. Your livestock couldn't live off the grass that was here in America. So because there was a cultural shift to now the settlers were coming in and they needed to have their livestock to feed on something, they had to bring grass into America somehow. So in 1780, the Shakers actually began the first industrial production of high quality grass seed in America. Now with these new grasses, they had to figure out a way to keep them alive and luscious all throughout the year. And we're going to fast forward to 1915. Golf was becoming really popular. These green spaces were established. Everyone was kind of getting on board with the lawn idea. So this is according to Montecito Landscape. It says by 1950, the U.S. Department of Agriculture was collaborating with the U.S. Golf Association to find the right grasses that would create a durable and attractive lawn suitable for the variety of climates in America. And they did. But in order to keep it growing, they had to use the most suitable pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers that would protect and serve the newly blended mix of grasses. After all, now that we had a good grass blend, we couldn't let it starve or be eaten alive by some hungry pests or succumb to some nasty disease. And many sources I used in my research, which are all linked below if you want to go ahead and take a look if more interest in this story, all seem to echo the great concern that lawns create with their ecological impact. But we'll talk more about that in the end of the episode. But first, let's fast forward to post-World War II, where lawns gained more popularity, not only for presenting your social status to the world. You had a luscious green space, you had arrived, you no longer had vegetables and ugly gardens in your front lawn and a cow grazing. You had this luscious lawn, but now the lawns actually symbolized patriotism. In 1944, right on the cusp of the end of World War II, Franklin Roosevelt signed the GI Bill. This bill's primary goal was to support returning veterans with their readjustment to civilian life. The GI Bill provided funding for education, training, vocational rehabilitation, government-backed loan for homes, businesses and farms, and unemployment benefit for up to 52 weeks. According to the Department of Veteran Affairs, the program backed 2.4 million low-interest home loans for veterans. So this caused home ownership rates to rise. owning a home became synonymous with the American dream, just like we know today. And just a little side note, it doesn't really feel like it anymore. If our government would stop printing money, maybe owning a home would be part of the American dream again. But I digress. That's not what this episode's about. So, having a nice manicured lawn within your white picket fence became a physical manifestation of the true American dream. Now, with the GI Bill came $2.4 million low-interest home loans. There was a gentleman named Levitt who saw this as a major business opportunity. So he created a real estate, or I guess a construction combo company with him and his sons, and they built communities called Levittowns. So they were housing communities in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and they were basically cookie cutter suburbs before they became cookie cutter suburbs. We've all seen how the suburbs have these cookie cutter houses with the lawn and everything in front of it. Not only did Mr. Levitt come up with a cookie cutter suburb, he also created ranch style homes. He's attributed to coming up with that style. He also wanted to make sure that his housing developments, or the houses, the Levittowns, had lawns. This is what he had to say about it. A fine lawn makes a frame for a dwelling. It's the first thing a visitor sees, and the first impressions are the lasting ones. He also was known to be very savvy in business. So he made various moves with his company, including these, which I'll list out to you guys. So he reduced the cost of constructing houses by freezing out union labor. And this allowed Levitt to use the latest technology at the time. He would use spray painting that would kind of cut down costs and make the labor quicker. Levitt also cut out the middleman and purchased many items, including lumber and televisions, directly from the manufacturers, as well as constructing his own factory to produce nails. The building of every house was reduced to 27 steps, and subcontractors were responsible for each step. His mass production of thousands of houses at virtually the same time allowed Levitt to sell them fully furnished with modern electric appliances. So knowing that these veterans would have government money to spend, he went to work and he figured out a very systematic way to do these houses and neighborhoods. He was also named in Time magazine in 1950 with the tagline, "For sale, a new way of life." By the late 1960s, Levitt had become one of the richest men in America, with a fortunate estimate of at least $100 million, which in 2024 would have equaled out to $1 billion. Unfortunately, Levitt's end was not quite as boisterous and exciting as the beginning. So after being retired and kind of just enjoying the money that he had with his life, he decided to try to get back in the game, but it just wasn't the same. He was not able to repeat the success like he had before. He restarted a series of companies from the 1970s to 1980s, all fail, and he actually ended his life with great debt. But regardless how his story ended, the idea of the cookie cutter suburb, the ranch style home, and having a lawn in the front yard definitely stuck. So now we're going to kind of hang out in the 1950s. We know that things have kind of calmed down. We have everyone living in their suburban cookie cutter homes. People are enjoying the convenience that the 1950s brought. We've all seen the movies. People are walking around in their poodle skirts, going to sock hops, drinking milkshakes, and roller skating, and it's just a happy time in the 1950s. And with that happy time, they actually had the invention of the garden hose and the rotary mower. So keeping your lawn manicured was no longer just your patriotic duty, but it also was a symbol of your household. So how manicured and neat your lawn was a reflection on you, the American, and the individual who owned that home. But with that being said, the lawn and grass were now not only a symbol of your household, but they were a symbol of a post-war suburban conformity. The culture shifted the idea of just Americans being free to now the American dream must include a perfectly manicured lawn, cookie cutter with everybody else. The suburban expansion gave the allure that Americans were truly free and enjoying their lives. There was no need to grow vegetables and herbs because we now have grocery stores. Americans now relied on material comforts. This is where I think we could say that there's a cultural shift from the American idea of freedom to no longer really necessarily being free, but the idea of arriving in the American freedom in the sense that now you have more convenience. You could manicure your lawn much easier. You now could go to the supermarket. You didn't have to grow vegetables in your front yard or in your garden. You could go somewhere and they were prepared for you. We were enjoying casseroles made out of a can, and we were relying on material comforts, no longer needing to provide for ourselves, using our small green spaces as something productive, but now using them maybe as leisure time, but also as just showing that conformity and convenience was maybe now what we considered freedom. And on kind of an interesting note, now that cookie cutter lawns were something that we were supposed to celebrate and represent ourselves well and a symbol of freedom, this worthless crop that now takes up so much of our land that doesn't produce anything for us and wasn't even native to this area is considered something to be proud of. And with that, of course, when something becomes popular, there's always someone who wants to be in charge. So in 1960, we have the establishment of the HOA Corporation. And of course, they had to walk around and ensure that neighborhoods maintained this worthless crop that doesn't do anything for us besides looking at it and thinking it's nice and green, was maintained in a specific manner. And you can love HOAs or hate HOAs, that's a whole nother ball of wax, but they were established in the 1960s if you want to do some more research. And what's ironic about all of this, the most widely irrigated crop in this entire country isn't even useful to us. And ironically, it's no longer even being used for what it was intended for, feeding livestock. Now we have livestock that are raised in warehouses, eating corn and who knows what else, living a really sad life, until they move us all to 3D printed meat anyways. And if you want to know more about that, check out my Coffee and Conspiracy podcast episode on the food pyramid. The whole reason of bringing grass over was so the livestock would have something to eat, and it's not even being used for that anymore. So we are spending our time tending to this foreign, inedible, unproductive, worthless plant that takes up, I think, so much of our space and time and energy, and it's honestly just worthless. So maintaining a crop that's not native to the land actually took a secret ingredient, and that is pesticides and fertilizer. And as we know, because we've all seen the commercials for the lawsuits, pesticides really have negative effects on humans and also animals. They're endocrine disruptors, they have neurotoxins, they can cause cancer and have negative reproductive effects. According to a 2020 CNN report, residential lawns make up 2% of the US land, or 49,000 miles, roughly to the size of Greece, but require more irrigation than any agricultural crop in this country. So we're all just running around maintaining this grass for, it doesn't do anything for us. There's no benefit. According to a DC nonprofit called Beyond Pesticides, around 66% of American households use pesticides and use them at a significantly higher concentration than agriculture. And in this article that I found, it's from Sherwood Ripples, and it's a resident specifically in Michigan, which is where I'm from, and I love Michigan. And it talks about how actually the pesticides and everything go into the Great Lakes. It says, a recent study published by the Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry sheds light on the extent of pesticide pollution in the Great Lakes and other bodies of water like the Milwaukee River, finding new evidence of high pesticide levels in the water all year round. And it's not obviously just humans that are affected by pesticides. We have pollinators and also animals that are affected as well. So bees, which are critical for about a third of our food production and essential to the ecosystem worldwide, have been dying off in staggering numbers. This is partially due to colony collapse disorder, which is caused by pesticides. So friends, we have been told first lawns represent a leisure, wealthy status that we've arrived. Then we were told that there are patriotic duty to maintain and make sure they look great. And then we were told that the lawn actually reflects the type of person we are and the type of household we're maintaining. And we know that grass actually isn't even native to our country and does absolutely 0% anything for us because we can't eat it. And it doesn't even attract pollinators or anything. So it's just an interesting thought that something that we all spend collectively a lot of time on, a lot of money on, I feel like we're being a little bit duped into being told that we need to have these manicured front lawns. Some people, that's all the space you have. If we used our green space to actually benefit ourselves and not buy into this idea that it's supposed to look a certain cookie cutter way because we were told that by someone who built houses and was worth $1 billion at one point, if we use that space to grow our own vegetables or to create, put flowers out so the pollinators would have somewhere to be, and we didn't buy into this idea of what grass should look like, I don't know, maybe we would enjoy our lawns a little bit more, and maybe we could utilize our green space better in a way that would benefit ourselves and benefit our community and our neighborhoods. I also do want to say, friends, because I've kind of touched on the area of like green issues or climate issues or whatever you want to call it. And I know that us spraying pesticides on our grass is not the number one issue. I know me driving my little gasoline car to work and back is not the number one issue. We know that with climate issues that we're having, we're up against a lot, not only corporations with all their pollution and issues there, but also if you watch my Coffee and Conspiracy episode on weather modification, we have chemtrails, which I don't go too much into. I talk more about weather modification, but people are messing with the environment that we have, that the Lord originally has set up, and we have different issues that we're coming up against as far as climate or green or, you know, those types of things. But learning that the grass that we have here isn't even native to our country was super interesting to me, and that's something I never knew. It really blew my mind. So all that just to say, I'm not saying that we can solve all climate issues by not using pesticides. Pesticides are bad for you to use. They're not great for humans to have on them. The chemicals, there's a lot of natural solutions you can use instead of those. But if we do have to maintain something that's not even native to our country with chemicals, is it even worth having? Like, it's such a worthless crop, and it's like the biggest thing that we maintain. What do you think, friends? Is it just that there's been a social shift in society and just culturally we have grass and it's not a big deal and we can just maintain our lawns and be a cookie cutter good American citizen? Or should we be considering the little bit of green space that we have that we supposedly own could be used to grow our own food and support ourselves? And shouldn't that be a symbol of freedom and patriotism, where we can utilize the space to better ourselves, give us something that we need so we're not supporting corporations or big box stores, and we're able to give maybe more away to our neighborhood, fresh food and fresh produce? What I will say is, if the grass is a symbol of conformity and a grass is a symbol of me submitting to what society wants to tell me is appropriate, when really before it was a space for me to be able to utilize it to grow fresh vegetables, to create a better environment for pollinators, and to create a better ecosystem in my neighborhood and society, I don't know, maybe I want to consider using my front lawn for that and have it be a symbol of true freedom instead of just conformity to what everyone else or what society thinks I need to do. So I'll let you do some more research and decide what you think, friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll be talking to you soon.